They called me American scum, not behind my back, to my face. And by they, I mean my sister's husband. Let's call him Ethan, because that's his name, and I don't care if he finds this story one day. Actually, I kind of hope he does. I want him to see what the so-called scum does when you light the wrong fire. It all started 3 weeks ago, when my sister Hannah invited me to stay with them in Connecticut. After my divorce and a rough layoff, I needed a break. Some quiet time in her big colonial house, maybe a little wine, a lot of Netflix, and absolutely zero drama. Instead, I walked straight into a political circus and a man with a god complex. "Here comes the American scum," Ethan said, not even a minute after I entered their house. He didn't say it like a joke. He said it like it was my job title. I turned around, thinking maybe someone dropped a pizza box with scum printed on it. No such luck. Just Ethan in his button-down shirt and smug little grin. "Excuse me?" I said. "You heard me," he said, sipping from a glass of something brown and expensive. "You're everything wrong with this country. Divorced, unemployed, 38, living off sympathy. You people are like parasites." I blinked. "You people?" Hannah popped, her head out of the kitchen, nervous as a deer during hunting season. "Ethan," she said gently, "please." But Ethan didn't stop. Of course not. Misogynists are like wind-up toys. Once you twist them up with enough ego, they just keep going. "Living proof that American feminism has rotted the female brain," he said, as if he were giving a TED Talk. I stared at him. Then I laughed. Not politely, not nervously. I laughed the way a villain does when the hero finally figures out he was the puppet master all along. "You know," I said, "it's funny. Because you have all the charm of a parking ticket, and yet somehow my sister married you. So who's the real scum here?" That got me a death glare and an awkward silence. Hannah changed the subject to something benign like gardenias or gluten-free pasta. I sat down, opened a bottle of wine, and silently made a bet with myself. 10 days. That's how long I'd last in that house before someone ended up dead. Spoiler, I was wrong. It didn't take 10 days. It took 3. By day 2, Ethan was already trying to debate me about feminism, as if I owed him an explanation for why I didn't shave my legs or why I didn't bake my ex-husband fresh banana bread every morning. He used words like biological imperative and traditional values. And I used words like boring, oppressive, and you sound like a failed cult leader. On day 3, things got weird. It started after dinner. Hannah had gone upstairs to take a bath, and Ethan was pouring himself another drink, because God forbid he spend 5 seconds sober. I was curled up on the couch, reading a book, wearing sweatpants and an oversized hoodie, the international symbol for don't talk to me. But Ethan didn't care about symbols. "You know," he said, walking over to the couch, "for an unemployed feminist, you have surprisingly nice legs." I didn't even look up. "And for a married man, you have surprisingly little self-control," he chuckled. Sat down in the armchair across from me. "Just an observation. Don't flatter yourself." "Trust me," I said, flipping the page. "I'd rather be flattered by a raccoon with rabies." He didn't move, just sat there, watching me, sipping his drink like a man trying to warm himself with gasoline. "You act like you're so much better than me," he said. "But I see you. You're lonely, bitter, and desperate for attention. And you're projecting so hard I could use you as a movie screen. He stood up, walked toward the stairs, then turned back, gave me a smirk. I'll never forget. Don't pretend. You're not curious, he said. Then he went upstairs, and I sat there, heart pounding, not because I was scared, but because I was disgusted, and because I realized something. He wanted me. He wanted the woman he called American scum, and I wanted revenge. Let's rewind a bit. Ethan is one of those men who loves to pretend he's morally superior while swimming in his own hypocrisy. He goes to church every Sunday but cheats on his taxes. He talks about family values but flirts with the babysitter. He says women should be modest but Googles lingerie models on his lunch break. The kicker? He's got dirt, loads of it. And I started collecting it. While Hannah was at work and Ethan was out running his so-called consulting business, I made myself useful. I cleaned the house. I cooked meals, and I snooped through every drawer, cabinet, and laptop I could get my hands on. Turns out, Mr. Traditional Values had a subscription to at least 3 very modern websites. I screenshotted everything. Emails, chat logs, receipts. Even a few selfies he'd sent to someone named Cherry Red 81. I don't know who that is, but she deserves a medal for surviving those DMs. By the end of the week, I had enough blackmail material to make a priest cry, but I didn't use it. Not yet. I waited, because I knew Ethan would make the next move. He couldn't help himself. Men like him never can. Sure enough, day 5 came with fireworks. It was a Friday night. Hannah had to stay late at the hospital. Ethan came home early, drunk, and more arrogant than ever. I was making tea when he cornered me in the kitchen. "You've got attitude," he said, leaning against the fridge. "But I like that." I stared at him, deadpan. "Do you rehearse this garbage in front of a mirror, or does it just ooze out naturally?" He grinned. "You act like you don't like it, but I see the way you look at me." "Yeah," I said, like I'm trying to figure out which part of you smells the worst. He took a step closer. I held up the tea kettle like a weapon. He laughed. "Relax. I'm just saying, you're hot, in a trashy American way." I looked him dead in the eye. "Say that again, and I'll boil you like a lobster." He didn't. Say it again. But he didn't leave either. Just stood there, smiling. That's when I knew. This wasn't just about insult anymore. This was about control. Ethan wanted power. Over me. Over Hannah. Over anyone who made him feel small. And me? I was done playing nice. I made a decision that night. A plan. I was going to burn him. But not with tea. With truth. Let me tell you a secret. There's nothing more dangerous than a bored woman with time, access to your Wi-Fi, and a personal vendetta. And Ethan? He handed me all 3 on a silver platter. After his little kitchen stunt, calling me hot in a trashy American way, I stopped playing defense. I went full offense. I became his shadow. Quiet, watching, waiting, smiling just enough to make him think I was conflicted, tempted, maybe. He mistook it for weakness. Classic mistake. Men like Ethan always think women are either saints or seductresses, virgins or whores. He didn't realize I was neither. I was a strategist, and I had already started building the bomb that would blow up his life. Step 1 was simple. Play dumb. I started laughing at his jokes. Small ones at first. Dry chuckles that could be written off as politeness. But then I started letting them land harder. Full laughter, teeth, eyes, fake, of course. But he didn't know that. By day 6, he was convinced I was coming around. He'd brush past me in the hallway, hover in door frames, drop comments like, "If I'd met you before Hannah," or my personal favorite, "God made a mistake putting us in the same family." Gross, right? But I'd just smile, sip my tea, tilt my head and say something like, "You really shouldn't say that," in a voice that didn't sound like a no, but not quite a yes either. It drove him insane. And that was the point, because men like Ethan don't want real women. They want the chase. They want to feel powerful. So I gave him just enough to keep running while I was building the trap. Step 2, bait. You see, Ethan had one weakness. Well, besides his ego, his alcoholism, and his fragile masculinity, and that was tech. The man was addicted to his devices. Laptop, phone, tablet, smartwatch. He had them all synced up like a digital life support system, but he never changed his passwords. I know this because I watched him type them. 3 times. Uppercase E, his daughter's birthday, ! Like clockwork. Once I was in, it was a buffet. Emails, photos, Tinder profile, messages to women half his age, screenshots of inspirational quotes he sent to interns that sounded like motivational posters dipped in testosterone. But the cherry on top? A folder labeled work stuff. I clicked it. It was not work stuff. It was full of images, screenshots, private files from his consulting clients, tax documents, sensitive internal memos, all marked confidential. He had been blackmailing people, real companies. That's when the scope changed. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about how many people this man had stepped on, used, manipulated. And suddenly, I felt something strange. Righteous. Now, before you crown me a hero, let me make something clear. I wasn't doing this to save the world. I was doing this because I wanted him humiliated. I wanted him bleeding ego on the floor, crawling through the same dirt he'd thrown at everyone else. That's where step 3 came in. Documentation. I screen recorded everything. Every message. Every document. Every filthy DM he sent to a woman named Vanilla Bliss at 2 a.m., and I saved it all to a cloud drive under the name Family Recipes. Very subtle, very un-American scum of me. But it still wasn't enough. I needed him to act. To do something so vile, so pathetic, so unmistakably incriminating that even my sister, the queen of denial, would have no choice but to see him for what he was. So I pushed. One morning I came downstairs in a silk robe. Not sexy, not revealing, just slightly out of character, enough to trigger the predator in him. Ethan looked up from his coffee like a man seeing a vending machine start to tip over. "New look?" he asked, eyes flicking over me. "Laundry day," I said. "Besides, I figured you might appreciate me putting in more effort." He blinked. Then smiled, hook, line, idiot. That night, Hannah was working late again. Ethan poured 2 glasses of wine and asked if I wanted to relax and talk. I said yes. He lit candles. Put on jazz. Jazz. This man thought Miles Davis could get me into bed. We sat on the couch. He kept scooting closer. I kept accidentally brushing his leg, until finally, he leaned in and kissed me. I didn't move. Not forward, not back. Just stayed still long enough for the security camera, yes, security camera, to capture it. Because 2 days before, I had installed a nanny cam in the bookshelf behind the sofa. Why? Because I'm not just American scum. I'm prepared American scum. After the kiss, he pulled back and looked at me like a golden retriever waiting for a treat. "Well?" he asked. I stood up. "Thanks for confirming everything I ever thought about you," I said. He blinked. Confused. I walked to the bookshelf, opened the little compartment, pulled out the camera. He turned pale. "What is that?" he asked. "Footage," I said. "Of you, trying to cheat on your wife with her sister, who you called Scum, remember?" He stood up. "You little..." I said, holding up a finger. "One more insult and I send the videos and your Dropbox of corporate extortion to your boss, your wife, and the IRS. He froze, because he knew. I wasn't bluffing. That night, I slept like a baby. Ethan, meanwhile, spent the night in his home office, pacing and muttering like a man who'd lost a poker game to the devil. But here's the thing about men like him. They don't go down easy, and that's why I had one more step. Step 4, execution. The next day, I took Hannah out to brunch. We went to this cute little cafe downtown. Avocado toast, iced lattes, mimosas, real American stuff. Halfway through her eggs Benedict, I dropped the bomb. "Hannah," I said, "what would you do if Ethan kissed me?" She blinked, laughed. "What?" "I'm serious," I said. "What if your husband kissed your sister while you were at work?" Her face fell. "Why would you say that?" "Because he did." Then I pulled out my phone, played the video, watched her watch it. Her eyes didn't blink once. Her hands tightened around the coffee mug. Her jaw tensed like it had been bolted shut. But she didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just said, "I need to go home." When we got back to the house, Ethan was waiting, dressed like a lawyer on trial. He opened his mouth to speak, but Hannah slapped him. Hard, clean, no hesitation. Then she turned to me. "Send me everything." I did. Within 48 hours, she filed for divorce. Within 72 hours, Ethan's company started investigating him for ethics violations. And 1 week later, I heard through a friend that he was let go quietly and that the IRS was reviewing his filings. He tried to call me once. I didn't answer. Instead, I changed my voicemail to, "Hi, you've reached the American Scum. If you're calling to apologize, press 1. If you're calling to beg, press 2. If you're Ethan, hang up and rot." So now here I am, living in Boston, writing a memoir called Trashy and Thriving. Still unemployed, still single, still American, but definitely not scum. And Ethan? Last I heard, he moved in with his brother, the one with the neck tattoo and the failed YouTube channel. Honestly, a perfect match. As for Hannah, she's doing better. Stronger. She doesn't talk about him much anymore. Just once in a while, when we're drinking wine and watching reruns of Dateline, she'll say, "You know, I think you saved my life." And I'll smile. Because that's what scum does. We float to the top. Some people say, revenge isn't sweet. I say they're doing it wrong. Because let me tell you, watching a man like Ethan unravel from the inside out, that was sweeter than a Southern tea in July. Let me set the scene. It's been 3 months since the kiss, since the slap, since the Dropbox folder titled Family Recipes, made its rounds through every corner of Ethan's corporate life. He lost everything. His job, his status, his carefully curated reputation as a family man who just wanted to empower others. Turns out, when your LinkedIn endorsements are all from women you hit on, the HR department takes notice. The divorce was brutal, public, and expensive. Hannah got the house, the car, the kids, the dog. Ethan? He got supervised visitation and a lawyer who wore Crocs. Poetic justice. But I wasn't done. Not yet. Because men like Ethan don't vanish quietly. They try to rewrite the story. And sure enough, right as the dust began to settle, he popped back, up like a cockroach with a comb over. This time he came for me. It started small. Weird DMs from burner accounts, comments on old Instagram posts. One said, "Sluts get what they deserve." Classy. Then came the emails. Anonymous, of course. Telling me I was evil, that I'd ruined a good man, that I was spiteful American garbage. Nostalgia. He brought back the classics. At first, I laughed it off. But then things escalated. Someone keyed my car. I started getting phone calls at 3 a.m. Nothing but breathing. And once, I found a dead raccoon on my doorstep. Subtle, right? I knew it was him. No one else hated me with that much energy and that little imagination. So, I did what any rational woman would do. I packed a bag and I drove to upstate New York. See, Ethan had moved in with his brother Nate, remember? Nate was a washed-up YouTuber who once tried to go viral by faking his own kidnapping. Spoiler alert, it didn't work. They lived in a sad little cabin with no curtains and spotty Wi-Fi, which made them easy to watch and easier to trap. I rented a place nearby under a fake name. Don't ask where I got the ID. Let's just say, if you Venmo the right drag queen in Brooklyn, anything's possible. Then I waited. I watched. And I planned. This wasn't going to be just about karma. This was going to be a performance. One evening I spotted Ethan driving into town, alone. Perfect. I followed, from a distance. Not enough to be obvious, but close enough to see him walk into a dingy bar and order something brown and desperate. I gave it 10 minutes. Then I walked in. Same silk robe vibe. But this time, on purpose. He didn't see me at first, until I slid onto the stool next to him. "Miss me?" I said, smiling. He flinched, then smirked. "I see you couldn't stay away." "You're right," I said. I wanted to see how rock bottom looks in flannel. He didn't like that, but he tried to hide it, tried to play cool, tried to charm me again, and just like last time, I let him think it was working. I told him I missed the thrill, the danger. I leaned in and whispered, "What if we gave it a real chance?" He blinked. Twice. "Are you serious?" "As a dead raccoon," I said, sipping his drink. He laughed, and I knew right then I had him, not because he believed me, but because he wanted to believe me. Because the one thing worse than being dumped by your wife and fired from your job is thinking the woman who did it all might still want you. The next night, I invited him to my rented cabin, told him to bring wine. He showed up wearing cologne so thick I nearly passed out. I let him in, closed the door, locked it behind him. Then I handed him a glass. "To new beginnings," I said. He drank it, and within 5 minutes he was out cold on the couch. Don't panic. I didn't kill him. I'm not that kind of scum. But I did borrow his phone, his laptop, his backup hard drive, and I copied everything. Turns out, Ethan was still at it. He'd created a fake consulting firm and was selling old client data to offshore buyers. Fraud, wire fraud, identity theft, you name it. So I forwarded it all. To the FBI, to his ex-boss, to his mother. Then I tucked his phone under his arm, wiped my prints, and left him drooling into my throw pillow. He woke up alone, confused, and very much canceled. A week later, Ethan was arrested, charged with cybercrimes, data theft, and, get this, attempted witness intimidation. Apparently he'd tried to hire someone to slash my tires. The guy he hired? An undercover cop. You really can't make this stuff up. The local news ran a full story. Disgraced consultant accused of blackmail and harassment. His mugshot looked like he'd just sneezed mid-photo. Beautiful. Now, you might think the story ends there. Ethan in jail. Me sipping cocktails and watching reruns of Judge Judy. But life had one last twist for me. See? A few weeks after Ethan's arrest, Hannah called. We hadn't spoken much since the divorce. Understandable. It was a lot. But she wanted to meet. She said she had something to show me. So I drove to her new place. She looked good, lighter, like someone who'd crawled out of a burning building and decided to never go near fire again. We sat on the porch. She handed me an envelope. Inside, a letter, written by Ethan from jail. It was addressed to me. She hadn't opened it, wanted me to do it myself. I hesitated, then read. It was pathetic. He rambled about how I'd ruined his life, how I was a snake, a liar, a manipulator. He said I had bewitched him, said I'd made him lose everything. And then, at the end, he wrote, "But even now, a part of me still wants you." I laughed, out loud, because there it was. Even after everything. After the exposure, the humiliation, the handcuffs. He still thought I was the problem. Still thought I was his. Men like Ethan don't learn. They decay. I burned the letter in Hannah's fire pit, watched the edges curl and blacken. Then I turned to her and said, "Let's get tacos." She laughed, said she'd been craving them. We drove into town, music blasting, the windows down. No guilt, no shame. Just two women free from the same monster. Today, I teach workshops on manipulation, on gaslighting, on spotting the red flags before you marry them. I call it Scum School. It's invitation only, and yes, it's thriving. And Ethan? He's serving 4 years. Minimum. The prison doesn't allow emails, but I hear he's become quite the laundry folder. Irony's funny like that. So the next time someone calls you names, calls you garbage, calls you American scum, smile.